Welcome to Living in Connection, where we explore the nature of physical and non-physical reality and what that means in your life.
Welcome and good morning. One more time, I'm Dirk and this is my friend Frank DeMarco, and we've been chatting with the guys upstairs and each other on all kinds of things about life. And we kind of had run into a place of wondering where we should go from here.
We spend a lot of time in that place.
Yeah, it's a really common one. But one of the things that really struck me, and so we talked about maybe going here, was the idea of resignation versus surrender and acceptance.
And since it's your topic, and I'm going to put it to you to start off on it, do you have a specific example that brought that to mind?
Absolutely. And this is one you've actually heard me talk about it many times. And it goes back to the major challenge, the singular major challenge of my life was the arthritis that I had. I debate what verb to use because even though I've cured it, it's still very much a part of the whole of my life and the leftovers of it.
It's a dominant theme, really.
It became a dominant theme, and it resulted in all kinds of wonderful things, not despite of, not because of,
not for free.
as a result of the journey that it required me to take. And so what I think this is about is I've seen in life more often than I'd like to see, I've seen people come up against challenges where they finally just resign. They quit fighting, but they quit doing anything else either. They just simply fail. And then they suffer. And it's needless. And so the thing that was the starting point for me for this idea is in my 20s when I had the arthritis was extraordinarily active. I was in pain that really hard to describe. And I hurt so bad one night that I was on the edge and I very nearly did kill myself because I just simply couldn't take it anymore. And mind you, at the time I was taking very high doses of anti-inflammatories. I had literally unlimited prescriptions for any opiates that I wanted, morphine and codeine particularly. Any quantity. It turned out the codeine didn't work for me. Biologically, I can't process it. And the morphine, I really didn't care for. But those weren't answers anyway. They're just Band-Aids. They're masks to cover it. And so what was happening for me was that I was playing racquetball and handball, among other things, as a high school student and college student. I was an athlete. People know me today for all of my career in engineering and academic things. They don't know me from then where I was a jock. And actually, there's another story there that you like to tell, but we'll leave that for another time.
And this was important to your self-image too. I mean, that's how you look.
It is. It's very much part of your self-image. And what ended up happening is because that was part of me and who I was, I had the wants and desires to continue in that vein, to be me as I knew me. So doing all the hiking and, everything, rock climbing, basketball, anything, soccer, handball, racquetball, you name it. Every month or so, I had a Seiko watch, which I wore on the inside of my left wrist. And every month in a padded ball court, I would manage to slam my wrist hard enough into the floor that I would shatter the unbreakable quartz watch. And Seiko replaced that about a dozen times, and they were not happy about it. But what it gives an idea of is not that per se. It's I was ignoring all the signals of my body. Absolutely everything. I am abusing myself in ways that I didn't even understand.
You were beyond ignoring it. You were actually fighting against everything that was being told to you.
Exactly. And that's when the night came that I was in such dire straits. And I ended up calling and talking to my dad in the middle of the night. And I know I scared him half to death. And that was a wonderful conversation. It helped me in more ways than I can imagine. And in the morning, I realized that I had surrendered. I gave up. I stopped. I didn't give up everything. What I gave up was all of the things that were hurting me that I could not do.
Can I put it, what you gave up was an approach.
Exactly. And in that, I reached an acceptance that I had limitations that I did not want. Well, in that surrender and in that acceptance, suddenly by the morning, everything was vastly better. It wasn't just a little better. It wasn't just tolerable. It was better. And for many months and a couple of years even, it remained better, though I kept running into the problem of remembering who I thought I was and trying to go back into it.
And feeling less than when you couldn't do it.
Correct. So part of what then happened was trying to understand all of that and let it go and find a new way in life that was also me.
Now, what you just described sounds to me to be more like acceptance than any kind of surrender. You can say it as surrender, and I understand what you mean. You surrendered my particular ego, will, and I want it my way. That part you surrendered. But you didn't surrender in the sense of saying, the universe is too much for me, I'm dead, I'm just a victim here. That's not what you did or even considered.
That's the difference between resignation and surrender.
Okay.
And then the surrender morphing into acceptance, which it wasn't from a desire standpoint, if I want to go this way. These are the ways I can go.
Yeah, exactly. I can't fly, but I can climb stairs. Or
I can build airplanes. I can, There's other routes to accomplish what I want.
But there are some things I cannot do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's it's inherent in the 3D condition.
It is. And so part of what my thought was is to see if the guys have something to weigh in on this about, what did I miss in all of that I should have gotten at the time? Or what did I get that I really should be highlighting, that I should recognize more in myself?
All right, Dirk, they're ready to go.
Go.
We can't quite say that you missed it, but we're not sure that you ever actually stressed it to the degree that it warrants. When you had that conversation with your father and you were hanging moment by moment, just trying to get by, every moment was the struggle. And there was no respite, and there was no end. There was no end in sight. And all you could see was, I've got to stop this. I can't do this forever. But your father was able to talk you down.
Yes.
When the next morning things were vastly better, we're not positive that you fully weighed in what that implies, which is all of that pain, all of that suffering, all of that unmanageable distress. In other words, it isn't a matter of you didn't do it right. It's like you couldn't do it right. You couldn't do it. All of that was designed to make you stop because you were going in the wrong direction. Therefore, it was a gift, and a gift that you didn't want, and a gift that was hard to deal with. But now you can see that it was a gift. We're not sure that you've ever given it quite enough strength in your looking back on these things. The fact that pushing you to the edge, yes, it was a crisis, but it was a crisis meant well. It was a crisis. You could have failed. I mean, it might have been that you really couldn't have done it, and you did kill yourself, but you didn't. And because you didn't, all these other things gradually opened up. There was another question you had that doesn't come to our mind now, but if you ask it, we'll. What
else I missed? What else I might have gained that I didn't?
No, we think you did pretty well, actually. The one that we mentioned you sort of got anyway, but it's just we're trying to emphasize it. You could have paid more attention to it and still could, because, oh, actually, not so much for you two, but for anybody who might be watching.
Mhm.
There's always a gift in the situation. And the more dire the situation, the, how shall we say this? The higher the stakes. But the higher the stakes doesn't only mean this is terrible if you lose. It also means this is pretty good if you win.
Mhm.
And you're sometimes tempted not to see that. You in general, not you.
It took me decades to fully recognize the gifts, and I'm not sure that I'm entirely there yet. And partly that was because life continued on and all of the pressures of life continued on, which inhibited being able to see. And what I'm hoping that you can do here is to share for folks who have horrible, horrible conditions, whether it's cancers or other maladies of various sorts, whether psychological or physical or otherwise, what they might do, what they might focus on in order to find this kind of answer for themselves.
Okay. Well, we can say a couple of negative things first. You've got to get out of the victim mentality. You're not going to get anywhere. We can't think of any kind of positive result that comes from saying, for me, life has got it in for me. I am an innocent victim here. Now, the facts might support that view, because here's something, you're born with this condition. You didn't do anything to cause it. But even though the facts would support the view, that doesn't mean the view is right.
Mhm.
I guess really you'd have to say you need to start with an act of faith. The act of faith being the universe knows what it's doing. You are not an orphan. You are not being punished. And there is an opportunity here. Now, supposing, let's make an extreme case. Supposing you are quadriplegic or one of these people who have what they call locked-in syndrome. Now, well, no, let's back off from that because that is another subject for another time. But say you're someone who is so severely handicapped, you have no chance of a normal life. Take the scientist with the ALS,
Stephen
Stephen
Hawking.
Hawking. Yes, there's an example of a man who had every reason to say, I have really been crippled in this life. This is not fair. Other people are athletes. Other people are having fun. Had he done that, what exactly would that have accomplished for him? Instead, he turned a negative into a positive, except we're saying this, but we have to put an asterisk here and say, this is not saying that achievement is the desired result, because
Mhm.
external achievement may not have anything to do with why you're in this life. You're for all you know, everything that you need to do in this life is to be love and express love and experience love. And there's a million ways that can happen, but it may not have any tangible result. You may not be able to write poems or love stories or direct movies or any of those things. You may not be able to found a religion or to become a great adherent of a religion. There's no, we say this in many forms. We keep coming back to it. Being and doing are, yes, they're the same thing in a way, but the way you look at it in 3D tends to be, I'm either being or I'm doing, and doing is not what it's about. Doing is like an overflowing of the fountain that is you, but it is not the source of the fountain. It's the opposite. Okay,
Mhm.
and we haven't even begun to give anything useful to someone who is in this condition. So let's look at it from another point of view. If there are several ways this can happen. One, you can be born this way. Two, you can have something that develops incrementally. Three, there could be an accident or an incident or something that suddenly turns your life upside down. You're in a car wreck and all of a sudden you can't move, any of those things.
Mhm.
That's the one end of it. The other end of it is the person. It can be of so many different kinds of mentality. They can be of faith. They can be of anti-faith. They can be questioned. They can be not even thinking about, not very introspective at all. Those two sets of variables make possible a tremendous amount of scenarios. can we really say that there's one size that fits all? We've already given the only one we can say, which is do not allow yourself to consider yourself a victim. What we could say following that is, once you've done that, once you've made that act of faith that says the universe knows what it's doing, then it's a question of looking, feeling, admitting, certainly receptivity to your guys upstairs, because your non-3D component cannot be crippled, cannot be in mortal danger. It cannot have any kind of limitations that it doesn't already have by being connected with you. Maybe, just maybe, this is the best possible version of your life. Maybe, had you had what people call a normal life, other things would not have resolved, and other things would not even come into play. Now, you, Dirk, know full well how much of your own achievement, in a way, stems from you channeling your energies into the achievement to avoid having to be oppressed by your physical limitations. That is turning a bad thing into a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's also, though, if you want to look at it that way, taking advantage of a huge opportunity. Mm-hmm. Most people, when they meet, we won't say most people, many people, when they meet some huge crippling problem, well, right there, the word crippling, crippling implies here's this ideal thing, and then there's this less than. But what it usually is here's this ideal thing, and here's a different ideal thing. And the difficulty is nothing that can be said about this cannot be misheard as a cliche or as goody, life can be rainbows and unicorns, or whatever that expression is. Sometimes the most important things are the hardest to say, and sometimes the most important things that are said are the hardest to be heard. They really can't be heard. You'll say, trust the universe, and people will say, well, that's stupid. or they'll take it as a pietistic expression that says, I don't really want to think about your problems. Right. And often enough, it'll be transferred into, well, your problems are your fault. This is God punishing you. This is, your karma. This is a life contract. In many ways, people tend to think of it. None of that is particularly useful. For one thing, it's judgment, and you never have the ability to judge anyone else's life.
So at the beginning of this, I know for myself, being inside of it as it happened, the sensation of the world, pain in particular, the restrictions of the world, all of those things were absolutely intimate, immediate, and overwhelming and constant. Can you say something about how people in difficult straits might find a way to set that aside or to otherwise deal with it so that they can find this path out?
Yes, that's a very good question. By the way, we would say one side effect of that is you really learn thoroughly the art of being here now. Oh, yeah. Because your pain does not allow you to do otherwise. But it's actually, that's not a small achievement, because many people spend their lives sliding through, never quite here. A little bit there, a little bit in the future, a little bit in the side, but never really quite focused except in emergencies. And what you're describing is a lifelong emergency for the amount of time that it is there. So even seeing that aspect of it might help someone who's in that situation. It doesn't mean you hurt any less. It doesn't mean that you can do what you can't do. But what it does do is perhaps clear a little mental space. We would almost call it a spiritual space, where you can say, this is my situation for whatever reason. How do I maximize it? It's a negative way of looking at it would be to say, how do I cut my losses? A positive way to look at it would be, what is this clearing for me? What is this making possible that I wouldn't have otherwise? Unfortunately, we know, even listening to ourselves talk, we know that this can be made to sound like, well, it isn't really serious. It isn't really real, and that's just what happens with language. Knowing that it is you were in a situation that was not avoidable. There was no way around it. There was no way out of it. There was no way back from it. You had to stay there. It carried you moment by moment by moment, and sometimes you were almost holding your breath, metaphorically. So it isn't like we're saying this stuff can be worked around or doesn't really mean anything or isn't important. But what we are saying is, go back to Viktor Frankl one last time, probably not the last time. The only thing no one can take from you is how you choose to respond to what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
If you can respond, let's see if we can come up with a universal. It's tempting, but we're not sure it's right. But we'll throw it out anyway. The closer anyone stays to their non-3D component, the firmer a base they have to live in and live from, and the less likely they are to despair or to give up, in the sense of, not in the sense of thy will, not mine, but in the sense of, I can't do this, I'm overwhelmed, it's the universe's fault, I'm out of here. The best connection with the non-3D will be your best way to get through every day, easy or hard.
And my guys want to add in here that they say that within the construct that is your physical selves in physical matter reality, there are a lot of other additional constraints and actions occurring. And so just as what Frank's guys are describing about how you can lean on your higher self and connections there, within your body, you have similar abilities to control things. And so you can, for example, if you are in severe pain, as one example, pause in yourself and recognize and ask the other aspects of yourself to recognize that this is not helpful, that you honor it, you accept it, you understand it, you know that it's going to remain. However, we need a way to deal with this better, that the signal is overwhelming. And that in so doing, you can lessen the signals and control them to various degrees without necessarily eliminating them, but finding a new normal that you can live within.
That's very good, and it tempts me to go into one of our war stories, but I have known by personal experience that you can have an overwhelming, this is not a chronic condition, but something like when I had a tooth drilled, and there was all this pain because they were going to put in an insert, and that's very painful, the preparation. And I realized I could personify the pain, talk to it, and say, I know there's a problem, this under control, this is for a reason, I don't need all this pain, and dial it way back down. Now, whether that would also work for someone in a chronic condition, I really don't know. But, I know I have, the only firsthand experience I have of it is that sometimes when I am having trouble breathing, if I lie down, there is a mechanism inside of me that starts tensing up and would make the situation worse. And I can sort of, we say talk, but words are not really involved, but I can deal with it and persuade it to stay calm. So that isn't a matter of pain, but it is a matter of, we have more ability to interact with our autonomic systems than we think we do. And I know you must have 1,000 more stories like that.
I do. And they're ones that at various times became able to control blood pressure, all kinds of other aspects that these are things you should not control most of the time because your body really needs to have them in a steady state. They are in many cases controllable or adjustable. The one that strikes me, though, is that as I experienced it firsthand, what I realized was that there was a part of me that was screaming, that deep within the emotional aspects of my being, I was in horrible, horrible agony. And so a part of it had to do with holding that part of myself and caring for that part of myself.
Acknowledging it even.
And acknowledging it, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's I think what they meant when they said earlier that was what part of what went on there. You I don't know how you reacted to the pain, but the pain was trying desperately to get your attention because we're at critical mode here. And
Exactly.
when it did get your attention, then a lot of it fell away.
That's part of the surrender. The other thing too is, and this one is worth commenting on, is that I've had this discussion with many friends, and it always ends up going by the wayside and being forgotten again. One of the huge problems that occurs when you have some sort of a chronic condition like this is that the body responds not just with the sensations, pain and other things like that, fevers and whatnot, but it also responds in trying to take action to do things. So it will constrict blood flow to increase temperature in a region to kill an infection. It will do things like, because a particular nerve is being jammed in the spine or somewhere else, the muscles will pull up taut and guard. And they're trying to make everything rigid. They're, in essence, creating what's a lot like a corset or a brace. But in doing so, often that guarding is pulling things tight and causing the very problem that it's trying to protect against.
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of the going into it and understanding and acceptance and resignation, well, not resignation, surrender, is having the body's musculature and all of the other systems recognize this isn't helping the way we think it should. Let's try something else.
I would have said, I think we're saying the same thing, but I would have said it involves you as a consciousness redirecting it and saying, no, you're on the wrong way here.
This isn't helping. Yeah,
to put it mild.
Yeah, the guarding can be, particularly the guarding happens in two ways from my experience. One is the static guarding, where, as an example, with a disc or something in your back, the nerve is getting crushed. The muscles will come up firm and lock, and they're just holding it in horrible pain. The other way is where the muscles are more relaxed, but they're in a trigger mode, and the moment something touches, they will grab. And that's almost worse than the first version.
Oh, it's certainly less stable.
Mm-hmm.
Although, unless you like surprises, I mean.
Well, and you say that, but I've actually taken that as a strategy at times of in my mind redirecting when that happens, of going, "Woo, isn't that exciting?"
Okay,
I don't recommend that.
This merely demonstrates there's been brain damage.
Yeah.
Did we say anything here that might be helpful to someone who is in one of these extreme situations?
I think we cannot directly give them the answers for themselves because everyone's condition is different. I think what we did offer them is a way to think about things where they can find for themselves pathways that allow them to reduce the severity of the problem and find other paths out.
Well, I hope so.
To redirect it.
Okay. This was a good suggestion of yours as a topic. There's no way to know. I mean, you and I will never know if this ever helped anybody, but we'll hope so anyway.
We always hope.
Yep.
Indeed. Well, thank you, and we'll talk another time.
Okay. Always a pleasure.
Indeed.
See you next time.
Mm-hmm.
If you enjoyed this episode, please press like. Please press subscribe to stay informed of new episodes as they appear. We would love to hear from you in the comments section below, and we wish you the very best in connecting with your own guidance.